time. Uh, at MHAC, we are having a wonderful summer, very productive, but a very, very busy summer. And that is reflected in our agenda. These are some of the things that are keeping us busy. You will hear some important updates on academic program approval bill as we start the implementation phase. A lot of work in blueprint area, more mirror estate plan, and certainly our own work for post 2025 completion goals. Make sure that you're fully engaged in that process as well. And then, our planning for a student success summit. You probably got a save the date notice out. It went out a couple of times. And then some of our very important outreach efforts on FAFSA. And then certainly we want to hear from all of you how things are going on your campuses. So with that, Dr. Dow, floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. There are a number of really just updates that I want to make sure you're all aware of, give you all an opportunity to read some yellow flags, red flags, tell us things so that we can move ahead with your input under consideration. So let me walk through House Bill 1244 implementation updates. When we last met, I had shared with you all that we were going to be doing a very big presentation to the commissioners at the June commission meeting. That is recorded. I'm not going to try to repeat that presentation today, but these slides are based off of that. So really, this is an opportunity for you all to weigh in and provide some comments based on these initiatives that we need to do. Just as a reminder, we get this question a lot about how the review process will change in light of House Bill 1244, and I'm happy to share these slides with you all after today's meeting, so you'll get these. And you're welcome to circulate them and share them with others. So we're going to have that universal source for statewide workforce need in emerging fields. For those of you who may have watched the commission meeting that happened this morning, this was a prominent item for discussion about how this universal truth around workforce need in emerging fields will be used in the context of program review. We're going to, through a letter of intent process, where we'll be able to preview potential new graduate programs so we can provide early warning signs of duplication and encourage collaboration. We're going to have clear standards for the analysis of unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. House Bill teases these two concepts apart. So it's no longer unreasonable and unnecessary. It is unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication as two separate concepts. We're going to have a revised review meeting process. I'll talk a little bit more about that. A new definition for substantial modification, clear institutional distinction through updated mission statements. This is for the public institutions. We're going to have a program review process advisory committee and a review process for fully online programs. Last, we'll be doing a harm analysis should academic programs be allowed to be duplicated. We are working on an administrative procedures guide, and we're expected to have that released in the next few weeks. I hope everybody's okay going on a first name basis. Matt, let me call
I'm sorry,
you.
I just want to double check. Are you reading off slides that are...
Oh my goodness, I am, and I'm not even sharing my screen.
Okay, thanks.
Holy cow. I am so sorry. Thank you. That is a little bit embarrassing. Yes, slides. An administrative procedures guide. So again, these are all the items that I just rattled off, but we get this question a lot, how the process will change, and this is a summary. Let me share with you some regulatory changes that will be forthcoming. So review meeting changes were presented to the commission today, and they did approve those review meeting changes to start to go through the ALR process. Highlights of those review meeting changes include aligning with what House Bill 1244 requires, that each institution in a commission review meeting gets dedicated uninterrupted time, that the decision is, any deliberation that the commission has is done in a public session. And I am already forgetting the third item, but it's those changes align with what House Bill 1244 requires. There's going to be regulatory changes around substantial modification. Again, the commission got a preview of that today. We will do regulatory changes around unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication, regulatory changes around the letters of intent, and a separate process for fully online programs. So those are kind of pure regulatory changes that will be either forthcoming or currently under review or changes. So let me walk through each of these elements. I'm going to try to go quickly, but feel free to just raise your hand if you do have questions or want to discuss. We've talked about this before, the statewide workforce need. The final product, as we are envisioning it, will be one appendix that has 4 parts. One will be about workforce needs, or 2 parts will be about workforce needs, and the other 2 parts will be about emerging needs. So 1 and 2 deal with workforce needs. The first section is a list of state and regional workforce needs. The second section would be a list of academic programs that would address those needs. And so we're focusing both on existing academic programs that could be expanded or revised, as well as new academic programs that are needed. The second 2 sections, like I said, are focused on emerging workforce needs. And so similar format, we'll have a section that lists those emerging workforce needs, and then a 4th section that lists the emerging workforce needs programs. The definition of an emerging workforce need program is very specific in statute now. It is a graduate level program, not currently offered in Maryland, addresses a job or industry need that is innovative, unique, and rare, could leverage federal, state, or private resources, and does not meet an academic program that fulfills or supports an identified current state and regional workforce needs. So these are mutually exclusive, this idea of emerging workforce need programs versus academic programs that address a workforce need. Questions? Yes, Matt.
Sorry, thanks, Emily. Can you just talk a little bit about the role of commerce and labor and other input in developing both of the needs?
All of these sections, yeah. So we've had 2 or 3 conversations with labor and commerce on this. They're both very excited about this potential. Labor has an economist on staff who will play a pretty critical role. And at Commerce, we'll liaison with their research division as well as their higher ed coordinator and their advice. They have several industry-specific advisory councils. So we're in early stages of conversation with them. MHEC had to submit a JCR, respond to a JCR that gave some information about where we are in this collaboration. We identified that through Labor's WIOA plan, so Labor has to have a plan for the federal government to leverage WIOA funding. And in that plan, they have to identify, shockingly, almost exactly these things. They have to identify workforce needs in the state as well as emerging workforce needs to say they're going to funnel federal dollars to those areas. So Labor is actively updating that plan, and it should be finalized this summer. They have already drafted it. So it has a pretty robust list of both workforce needs and emerging workforce needs. Then Commerce is actively updating their strategic plan where they have identified key industry partners that they have seen as strategic industries to either bring to the state of Maryland or expand in Maryland. So those 2 lists are the starting base for what we mean by this idea of workforce need or emerging workforce need. It's leveraging data from that the labor occupational projections that Department of Labor produces, as well as what Commerce is seeing as data to inform those strategic partnerships with industries. So that's where we are. So we've had some early conversations with them, and we'll continue that work. MHEC does have approval for a new position. We're ready to recruit for that position. So that will give us some devoted staff to do this work. And labor is working to reconfigure so that they are super excited about this. They see the potential of being able to dig really a lot deeper on these topics. So they're working to figure out how to get some dedicated staff on their team. And then we'll leverage Commerce's existing industry partner relationships to flesh this all out and build it out. Does that help?
Definitely, thank you. And just one follow-up, if you don't mind. So do you view that as sort of the labor list and the commerce list being the theoretical entire universe, and then it'll be winnowed down, and then MHEC will then determine what academic programs are appropriate to each of those? Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks, Emily.
Exactly, yep. And we expect to have a draft of that this fall for not only segments, but certainly the institutions to weigh in and opine on version 1, the 2025 version. And we're expected to update it every year. So that is forthcoming. I am wary that it'll be a first version. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do like the whole scope in this, right? We've only got a couple more months ahead of us to like really get the full scope, but it will be baseline, initial review, and then I think the second version come 2026 will be far more detailed and expansive. So similarly, you all may have seen our inquiries around an advisory council on workforce shortage. This advisory council is specific to the Workforce Shortage Student Assistance Grant Program. This is established by statute. So there's a grant program to support students in identified workforce shortage areas. And we thought, well, this is just a perfect storm. Let's put all of this together. If we've got scholarships that are going towards workforce shortage, let's talk about it in this context of the advisory council and kind of combine this work all in one space. So we put out calls to the representatives that are supposed to serve on this council. We have that list for the most part. We're missing a couple of nominations, and then we'll convene this council for an initial meeting as well. The neat thing about this council is, one, the membership is dictated by statute, and it's a pretty big council, but it explicitly includes business partners, chambers of commerce, and the like. So that's where we'll also garner some unique perspective on workforce shortages. And I believe all the segments are part of this advisory council. So more to come, but this will be a venue where we can also talk about workforce shortages. Okay, questions on statewide and regional workforce need? Okay, moving on to the next. This one's a pretty quick one. Revisions to the definition of substantial modification. We've had that work group meeting a few times. We meet again next week on July 31st. The commission saw a preview of potential changes for the regulations at today's meeting. They reflect everything that, not everything, but they reflect items that everyone has come to a consensus on. We still need to talk through a few more items before they formally go to the commission, but this is progressing, and I think progressing well. Questions on this? Okay. Changes under discussion. I won't go into this in detail, but it'll be in the slide deck for your review. The standards for unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. The statute or the bill makes explicit changes to the statute. And this is an important distinction. Unreasonable program duplication is no longer about harm to another institution. It is about harm to the state or students attending institutions in Maryland. So that is kind of a mental shift about what unreasonable program duplication is. What we are working through right now are what are those standards and how we evaluate whether or not there's unreasonable program duplication, but want to explicitly make that clear. An unnecessary program duplication is now very clearly focused on a violation of the state's equal education opportunity obligations under state and federal law. So these are now two very distinct concepts that we will provide specific standards for academic program review. We're working with the AAG to develop these standards. For unreasonable duplication, we are thinking of the items that we've typically included in our analysis, so degree level, learning objectives, including competency skills, employment potential, certainly a curriculum analysis, program title, and zip code. Unnecessary duplication, because it has to deal with federal law, the AAGs are reviewing that and thinking through what those standards are. Questions on unreasonable and unnecessary duplication and where we are with that? Matt, go for it.
Sorry, I'll stop soon. I'm just curious how, when you talk about harm to the state or students within the state, I'm just curious sort of how you're viewing that and what kind of thresholds or standards you're contemplating would be the component pieces to show that.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you right now, but that is exactly where we are. What is harm? And we've, as you know, we've operationalized it by transition of enrollment from one institution to another, but that is institutional harm, not student harm or state harm. So we're going to have to reevaluate what we mean by that. Yes. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but that is exactly what we're trying to figure out. Katie. And it's Katie, correct?
Yes, it is Katie. Thank you. Yes, the two Katies from St. Mary's. Yes, backing up a step around the substantial modification, and given where we are, and I know our own processes on our campus for review, given that the target date is mid-academic year, when and how should institutions be considering working with MHEC around those changes in regulations? Because what could be substantial in one set is not substantial in another, and vice versa. So what would you advise as we look into the fall semester?
That's a great question. What we probably will do is, as soon as the commission does the initial adoption for these changes to go through the AALR process, we'll notify all the institutions to say, these are proposed regulatory changes, pending no major public comment or issues from the legislature, questions, changes. This is the timeline for them these are the next steps for it to go into effect, and the timeline for that so that institutions can best prepare. Usually that's a 3 to 4 month process. So if we get it before the commission at the September meeting, we have to hit that July or January 1st timeline. So the goal is to have them adopted by January 1st, 2025.
Thank you.
Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll communicate out to the campuses through our program review listserv that changes are potentially forthcoming once it starts the AALR process. Great question. Thank you for all of this. Okay, unreasonable and unnecessary duplication. Mission statements. Oh, Matt.
I'm really sorry.
No, this is why we're talking about it. Please.
Is there an anticipation on your part that, obviously it's a pretty ambiguous phrase, right? Do you anticipate bringing back sort of drafts, or you're thinking on it to this group or other groups, or like what is the input process that you guys are going to use to sort of determine the standards?
Absolutely. So in today's commission meeting, so let me jump ahead a little bit. In today's commission meeting, they approved bylaws for the Program Review Process Advisory Committee. So probably tomorrow or Friday, you're going to get an email for nominations onto this advisory committee. It has a pretty heavy composition of all the segmental leaders get representatives, and then a mix of provosts and presidents from community colleges, public four-years, and private institutions. So as soon as we can get that composition and we can get a meeting on the books, I think that's where we'll talk about unreasonable and unnecessary duplication. So that's what I think, that's where we're going. But I'll certainly leverage the segmental advisory council meetings as a space to provide you all updates as well. Candace, you were on mute, sorry.
I want to go back, sorry, I want to go back a little bit and just ask a question about the lists, and you don't need to flip back too much, but you know, when I saw this phrase emerging fields, I mean, it can mean something very different to an academic researcher than it does to, you know, a workforce official. And there, particularly at the graduate level, our institutions may be seeking to develop programs that are so different. You don't have them on your workforce list yet. And I just wanted to ensure that, you know, a program that's suggested at the undergraduate or graduate level that kind of doesn't intersect with the list isn't going to run into trouble because it's not on the list.
Yeah, good point. We'll have to be sensitive to that. So again, the list will be updated every year, and every year institutions will have an opportunity to weigh in and say, hey, we're thinking about something, or we see that there is a need for a thing. And it may not be even for a program at their campus, but they may say, hey, we need students to feed into our graduate programs and we need them. So I hear you, and we'll have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some coverage for, quote, liberal arts programs at the undergrad level, but, you know, speaking as someone with a master's in medieval literature, I sometimes, you know, might want to see programs that, you know, don't hit the workforce lists. And then in all of this, I know there's more emphasis on graduate programming, but I'm curious if there's any impact or modification anywhere on undergraduate proposals.
Yeah, we're thinking through that because the bill does focus on graduate programs. That's where we're starting. The undergrad issue is an issue, especially as we start to think about and teasing apart traditional liberal arts and science programs from undergrad programs that do in many ways lead to the workforce. I immediately go to accounting as the good example. You're being trained to be a CPA and you're going to go and get a job as an accountant. So thinking through those distinctions, we're going to have to figure that out. But the House bill focuses on graduate programs, so we're going to start with graduate programs.
And of course, at the undergraduate level, you're as much looking at the type of institution as the program. I mean, students, how they pick undergraduate institutions is not always about the academic program, for good or ill.
Absolutely. Yeah, duly noted. So that's a good segue into institutional distinctions for our public institutions and the mission statement review process. So it is our hope that we are going to share some proposed criteria with you all at the September meeting for you to think about and weigh in on what the criteria will be for mission statements, what the format should look like, and how institutions can, in the best way possible, demonstrate their distinction. Our expectation is to prepare the relevant materials for release after the workforce needs analysis is completed. And we will certainly give the public institutions a long runway to take these new requirements back to the campus, work through institutional governance, and submit a revised mission statement along with the criteria. We'll give you a long runway to do that, knowing that campuses need to engage with their community to do that work. So the immediate, we're going to give you some proposed criteria for you all to give us feedback, and then more to come after the workforce needs analysis is completed in January. Okay, we talked about the Program Review Process Advisory Committee, so that has been approved, and we will make quick headway in convening that group. So if you have recommendations on president and provost, so it can't be a president and a provost from the same school. It needs to be presidents and provosts from different institutions. We welcome those recommendations. They just need to come to the agency, to Secretary Rye. You can send them in care of me, but we'll give you a whole email with instructions on how to do that and a timeline. The quicker the better, so that we can try to come up with a meeting cadence and start to review some of these items in that space. And there are, I believe, 4 kind of at-large, non-president or provost slots for staff or other individuals that you think should participate and have thoughts about process issues for program review. And again, those bylaws are in the commission book, but we'll attach it to the email so that you have it when we make that announcement. We need to develop a process for fully online programs that are geared towards out-of-state students. So offered only online and to a majority of out-of-state students, and enable institutions to compete with out-of-state competitors. So we're going to hold this to be discussed and fleshed out at the Program Review Process Advisory Council meetings. So more to come on this, but this is an explicit example of how that advisory council will weigh in on new processes. Letters of intent for graduate programs. This is for new graduate programs. This will be expected every 6 months. They will be circulated. And there's an expectation that the commission use these letters of intent to facilitate collaboration and provide feedback around duplication. Again, the Program Review Process Advisory Council, sorry, it says committee on the slide, it should be council, will discuss this process, review it, and make recommendations on what this should look like. So again, more to come on this once we get the Program Review Process Advisory Council up and going. Agency needs to conduct a harm analysis. The first report is due to the General Assembly next September, so not this September, next September, but we are already thinking through what this is going to look like and what we mean by harm. So Matt, back to your earlier conversation, that's why we want to get ahead of this idea of harm as much as possible so that we can start preparing for this report well in advance of September 1st. And then last, an administrative procedures guide. It's currently under development. We need to release it this summer. This administrative procedures guide is going to have to be updated regularly as all of these processes change. So we're gonna have to make clear, like, you're gonna get this first version, but then there may be another version that comes in November, December, and another version that comes in April, just to keep it updated with these forthcoming changes. So know that it'll be a living document with multiple versions, likely over the next 2 to 3 years as these processes are implemented. But we do have a draft, and we do expect to get this out this summer. Some other process changes. Again, the commission meeting reviewed some changes to the review meeting process and procedures. We are trying to think through how we can better consult with key experts and faculty on program duplication when appropriate. This is absolutely not a slight to my MHEC staff. I'm very proud of the work that they do. And I know that they go into significant detail and effort, but they are not experts in some of these fields. And so trying to figure out how we can leverage experts, whether those are licensing boards, faculty from other institutions, to talk about duplication, specifically duplication, and what that looks like. And then certainly ad hoc collaborative meetings between institutions to think through how institutions can better collaborate as opposed to compete with new academic programs. And let me just, I shared this at the commission meeting in June. We want to really have transparent decision making, so we're trying to be intentional about sharing this information, making sure we have community partners at the table. We really want to have clearly defined processes and standards. We hear the campuses say, this is confusing, I don't understand what the standard is or the metric that I'm supposed to be meeting, so we're going to make an effort to clarify that. We absolutely want to ensure that community partners are included in the development of these changes and implementation, which is why we've prioritized convening that program review process advisory council. Make sure we have alignment with the governor and legislative priorities. And so we want to just put that out there, that these are principles that we really are, they're in the forefront as we're moving forward through this work. Questions on House Bill 1244 implementation, comments, concerns? That's the quick run of it. So our big next step, program review process advisory council, moving ahead with a substantial modification, and depending on timing, figuring out unreasonable. That's our next priority in terms of regulations, and it'll just be about timing. If we can get the program review process advisory council up and going in time for us to make changes around unreasonable and unnecessary duplication. Blueprint implementation plan. So on to the next topic, blueprint implementation plan. This is forthcoming, and wanted to take advantage of giving you again some updates. Let me give you the quick run of where higher ed / MHEC play a role in the blueprint implementation. In the first pillar, which focuses on early childhood education, you'll see there's a task that MSDE is requiring public and private providers to meet high quality standards to receive public funding. What this in a very specific way, what this means is that starting in the 2027-2028 academic year, pre-K teachers need to either have state certification or a bachelor's degree in any field while they pursue alternative certification. Pre-K teachers in Montessori schools must have a bachelor's degree and a very specific Montessori credential from one of 3 organizations. And pre-K teaching assistants need to have at least the Child Development Associate credential or a certificate or an associate's degree. So this means, I want to put this on your radar in terms of the idea of program development. These are specific programs in teacher education that campuses may want to be thinking about and focusing on. So that's early childhood education, and more to come as we work with the education deans and directors on this front. The second pillar focuses on high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. There are a number of tasks. I'll give you the quick summary. One is around the Maryland Teacher Fellow Scholarship. Another is around the Maryland Loan Assistant Repayment Program for public school teachers. And the other one is the Teacher Quality and Diversity Program, which are grants that can go to colleges and universities to diversify the teacher pipeline. And we're in year 3 of that Teacher Quality Diversity Grant Program. I believe 3 or 4 institutions have received grants in the past 2 years, of awarding. So that's objective 1, 3 specific tasks. Objective 2 is around the rigor of teacher preparation. So higher ed plays a role in the revision of the teacher preparation programs to meet the new requirements. If you're not already familiar, MSDE revised the teacher preparation requirements. That went into effect in April, and they are gearing up to do program review visits on existing teacher preparation programs to evaluate whether or not they are meeting these new requirements. My understanding is MSDE is working very closely with the education deans and directors around those upcoming reviews. So your ed dean should be well versed. They've done a number of training sessions on what these review sessions will look like. But that is a thing that is imminently coming in the upcoming academic year. Secretary Rye.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Dr. Dow, for giving me an opportunity here to jump in a little bit. This is a very important area for the state, and MSD is working with your deans of schools of education. Make sure that you are working with your own deans of school of education and providing them guidance and other issues as it may be important for your own campuses. Um, but keep in touch with your deans so you are completely in the loop, and you may bring some information here. If you think the conversations are not going well, bring it here so we can work with our colleagues at MSDE to put things on track again.
Absolutely. Related to, thank you, Secretary Rye, for those comments. Related to task 2, some of you may not be aware of this because I don't think we've explicitly talked about it in public meetings. MSDE, in collaboration with MHEC, is expected to set goals, particularly enrollment and retention goals for our teacher preparation programs. We've had some conversations. What I have shared with MSDE, particularly for the public institutions, pretty much every public institution in your MFR, you have an explicit goal around teacher preparation. Some of those are, the metrics vary, whether you're talking about completion, retention, praxis, pass rates, and the like, but then nonetheless, every public institution that has a teacher preparation program, you guys have that in your MFR. So that gives us some baseline working data to think about goals for teacher preparation programs. I turn to you, Matt. We'll have to have a separate conversation with the private, and not separate, but we'll have to figure out a different mechanism for the private and independent institutions. So that is, it's not new, but I don't think we have had explicit conversations. And so again, want to put that on your radar, that is a thing that MSDE, in collaboration with MHEC, setting goals for teacher preparation programs as part of task 2. Task 6, develop and implement pathways for paraprofessionals to become certified teachers. There's energy here about thinking through apprenticeship models, where we have, again, teaching assistants, how we can get them fully certified as teachers, and thinking through those pathways and how the higher ed institutions can create those programs in conjunction with the LEAs. Last is Pillar 3, college and career readiness. The objective is that there will be equitable opportunities to become college and career ready and shall meet the CCR standard at an equal rate. And so the main task here is that the Maryland State Board of Education should be consulting with all of these organizations that you see on the screen to do this work. So we'll continue to advocate for post-secondary pathways once a student is deemed college and career ready. At the same time, thinking through providing developmental and remedial support for 11th and 12th graders who need it so that they can be college and career ready by the time they graduate high school. So more to come on this front, but those are some highlights that are explicit around Blueprint. Next steps, the MHEC implementation plan is due August 15th, and this is for the next 3 years for fiscal year 24 to 27. I want to put this on your radar. It will be a quick turnaround. It is my hope that I'm actively working on this draft right now, have this out to you by the end of this week, early next week, for you to take a look, share with your institutions. I will also make sure the education deans and directors are aware of it. So I'll send that to them in a separate correspondence. But it will be a quick turnaround to provide feedback and thoughts. I don't think any of this is controversial. These are all things we are going to do them. We will do them with fidelity. It's just a matter of setting out the timeline and milestones to hit over the next 3 years. Questions on Blueprint? So the too long didn't read. a plan, a draft plan is forthcoming at the end of this week, early next week. Please take a look at it, prioritize it, and get us feedback as quickly as possible so that we can get it in by August 15th. Katie.
Yes, thanks. I'm actually going to try to attempt to join the first part of today's conversation with what has just been raised about where we are with blueprint implementation. Coming from the world of teacher education, we often navigate the fact that COMAR has very specific requirements for how our programs must look. And in some corners, there's been questions about whether, teacher ed needs an overall revisioning around, the workforce and emergent fields. So, just broadly speaking, have there been any sort of conversations around, the COMAR regs for teacher ed, the conversations about unnecessary duplication, and also workforce revisioning, because in different corners of the blueprint conversation, they have all been raised as potential considerations for programs. And much of the guidance has been framed more for larger institutions that work with teacher ed programs, and the smaller schools and programs usually are working to fit their systems into regulations and processes that were designed for much larger schools of education than what the institutions have. So I know a very unwieldy question to some degree, but it is tentacles all over the work I've done the last several years before this year.
Understood. Yeah, I think I don't know the answer to that, quite frankly. I hear the same commentary when we talk about teacher preparation programs and really needing the true workforce need, that you have a teacher that can walk into the classroom and successfully work with students to move their learning marker and successfully work with the families and the community in which that school lives in. There's so much more to teaching than standing in front of a classroom rattling off facts. So I hear exactly what you hear in many of the conversations I sit in. I don't know the answer to that. I will say our MHEC's relationship with MSDE in this context is much like a licensing board. We draw a little bit of a line that they are the content experts for this field. In the same way, we don't get involved with Board of Nursing requirements and what the NCLEX standards should be. Same thing with massage therapists and other licensing boards. So in this context, we do respect MSDE's authority around teacher preparation programs. Our role, MHEC's role, is to help coordinate, facilitate conversations, make sure campuses know what they need to do, advocate for campuses when appropriate. But I do want to be clear about, and MSDE I feel like we have a mutual understanding about our roles and responsibilities in this context.
Thank you. And I didn't think you could quite answer the question, but I figured I'd throw it out here while I was here.
Perfect. Understood. Phyllis.
One of the questions I had kind of, I guess now that it popped up into my mind as you were talking about the MSDE MHEC alignment with teacher education, is that I know recently there was the question of, teacher ed programs that have been approved by MSDE, or it seems like, and that they really didn't have MHEC program approval. Are we making any headway on that? And anything you can say about that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't want to call it cleanup, but in some ways it's cleanup. We are realizing absolutely that there are some quote unquote programs. And the reason why I put that in quotes is because a student may not be earning an actual credential at the end of completion. They are taking courses to meet the regulatory standards to be certified. So in that context, I think there has been a slip of what MHEC's approval should be, because again, a student they're getting transcripted credit, but they're not getting a certificate, they're not getting a degree, they're not going to a graduation ceremony. And so MHEC and MSDE, we have had several meetings. I cannot count how many meetings we have. Our two teams have come together, and I think we have a good process to catch some of those programs, provide an MHEC documentation that says you do or do not need MHEC approval to move ahead with this. So we are working through that actively right now. Yep. And in the essence of not trying to be bureaucratic, at the same time making sure that programs have all the right resources that they need, but then at the same time leaning on MSDE and what they demonstrate as what the content of the program for teacher certification. Okay, blueprint. The next 3 updates hopefully are quick. These are just things to put on your radar. You've seen these slides before. Moore Miller State Plan. We're heavily involved in Priority 2, which focuses on education and setting up Maryland students for success. In this priority, there is a explicit focus on transfer, scholarships, and STEM. When we come to STEM, we are trying to figure out how to wrap our heads around STEM programs and what we mean by STEM. I put this on your radar because we may be reaching out to you all in the near future to help us identify how we define STEM. Is it just some broad STIP codes? Do we put out a list and say, well, institutions, if you think you have a STEM program that isn't on here, let us know, so that when we talk about student completions, expansion of STEM programs, we have some boundaries of what we mean. So putting that on your radar, that when we put out requests for STEM, it will likely be in the context of the Moore Miller State Plan and thinking through relevant initiatives. But transfer, STEM, scholarships, those are the big hitters for Priority 2. In Priority 4, connecting Marylanders to jobs, there's an interest to expand early middle college opportunities, specifically early middle college opportunities that lead to explicit workforce outcomes. This aligns well with, back to Blueprint, the 45%, the 2030 45% goal, that by 2030, 45% of high schoolers will have had some kind of meaningful workforce experience or credential upon graduation, whether that's an apprenticeship, they've gone through a CTE program, or they're actually earning a certificate. So expanding early middle college opportunities in this context is a focus. And then wraparound services, particularly for students enrolled in workforce education. So this is a little bit more of a focus for our community colleges and the non-credit world, as well as our private career schools. Do students have access to childcare? If they are food insecure, do they know that there are community resources? So thinking through those opportunities and making sure our private career schools and our non-credit programs have access to those wraparound services. So if you see us asking questions about any of these elements, know that it is in the context of the Moore Miller State Plan and thinking through relevant initiatives. Post-2025 completion goals. You may have heard in other meetings, we are ready, I think, to move forward with moving from one goal, that 55% by 2025, to 3 goals. And what we are thinking we will do is revise the attainment goal to include meaningful credentials. So if we say by 2030, 65% of Marylanders will have a meaningful credential. That, of course, will include associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees, but also other credentials that lead to a meaningful workforce outcome. Some of you may be aware that Lumina puts out a Stronger Nation report, and if we look at their data, Maryland is ahead of our 55% completion goal when we include credentials of value. So we are talking with Lumina to figure out the mechanics behind how they make that calculation, so that if we use their methodology, we're comparing apples to apples. So revising the attainment goal to include meaningful credentials, then developing completion goals that focus on equity. And what we're thinking about here is looking at graduation metrics and how do they compare to the state of Maryland demographics. Are you completing students, are students graduating in a way that mirrors the demographics of the broader state of Maryland? So completion goals that focus on equity to really then encourage institutions. I know institutions are already doing this, but to encourage that even more around eliminating equity gaps. And then last, a third goal that focuses on research and development. Texas has a goal that is, I think, the only state right now that has an explicit state goal around research and development. Their goal is operationalized by number of PhDs they graduate and how much federal research dollars they bring in. There seems to be an interest to, for Maryland, focus on things like patents, incubators, private-public commercialization projects, really how we can bring businesses here, how we can support the businesses that already exist, and leveraging our higher ed research resources to do that work. So that's where we are with the post-2025 completion goals. We are working with HCM strategists, Lumina Foundation, and other national organizations to advise the agency on these goals. Matt.
Thanks, Emily. Just two questions on the first goal. Obviously, we're good with the credentials piece, but I am hoping, we've talked a number of times about the denominator factor and how that sort of hurt all the institutions' good efforts along the way. So I'm hoping we're not just going to set a attainment goal that everyone could be doing, everyone on this call could be doing what they're supposed to be doing at all their institutions, and the denominator winds up making it look like we're failing. So is that still the plan?
That's part of the reason why we have the second goal now, is to better highlight the good work that the campuses are doing and not hold the campuses responsible for in and out migration challenges. So the attainment goal, I think, will continue to have that challenge, that narrative to be, and so that's why we want to bring in a completion goal that says our institutions are doing really, and highlight that better. Secretary, maybe you can better explain that.
I think probably just ask more questions. First of all, our 2013 a goal that was set for 2025, 55%, that was quite a bit affected by population migrations. And especially, it caused serious achievement gaps. Achievement gaps as probably up to 20 to 30%. But as a state, we came close to 55%. I think by 2025, we will be somewhere 52, 53% range. But if you look at Lumina's matrix, Stronger Nation, where they're calculating certain certifications, we are at 58%. You see, so as a state, we have done okay. And, other states that are very close by from Maryland, they are also about the same place. So in terms of talent development, I think our higher education has done quite well. Now, when we set the goal for 2030, we have to look at population goal. That's important. But we also have to look at credential attainment goal. So population, you may say that this percent of our population will have a certificate or associate degree or higher. But we may also say, okay, that's one part of that goal. The other part is we will produce 300,000 credentials of value, or we will produce 300,000 meaningful credentials. We will have to define what those meaningful credentials are. Other states are working on that. We will work on that too. Meaningful to students, right? And meaningful to state. What do I mean by meaningful to individuals or meaningful to students? If it puts them on a family sustaining job, it's a meaningful credential. Or If it puts them in in-demand career that leads to a family sustaining job, I think that could be a meaningful credential, but we have to define that. Then what are meaningful credentials to the state of Maryland? Areas where our economy needs talent, right? We need teachers, we need nurses, we need cloud computing folks. I mean, all those areas where we have need. And our Department of Commerce is just about to release their strategic plan. They are coming up with signature industries of the state. And at higher education, what we can do is create pathways to those signature industries, and meaningful credentials could be part of those pathways. So those are some of the things we'll be sorting out. And I think by end of August, we should have something to you on which you can react. But you have all done the surveys. We thank you. In those surveys, they are linked to other states like Massachusetts, Colorado, Texas. You can look at what they are doing. You look at your program. I want a serious discussion within your institutions. So it's not that one person filled the survey at your institution, rest of the institution is not aware of. So we want to get input from everyone. So if you want to send us more information on these, you are most welcome to do that.
Thank you. Definitely appreciate it, and agree with everything you said. I just hoping we can find some way to smooth out given the population is dynamic. I'm certain there are ways that we could work together to have it still be a simple goal, but also not have us punished by just population change. And then just lastly, I would say on the third goal, for the research, if you're including all the other things, given that we know the federal research dollars that do come in and the state tracks it, it would seem to me that we might include that as well. But is there a reason to not include it, or
all of that can be included?
Okay.
But what we want to see is company sponsored research. You will see, we'll share some examples I can tell you today. Look at UC San Diego. They'd say this $1 million of business sponsored research is happening on our campuses. Why is that important? If business is coming to our institutions of higher education for their R&D, that's very good. That means, our own enterprise is current, our academic programs are current, and those will create jobs within the state because startups will come. We want startups coming out of our institutions of higher education. Patents, market value of those patents, those are all wonderful ways to look at our economy and see how we can grow our economy in our own state. And higher education gets more integrated with the economy. So we want to be close and closer.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions on post 2025 goals? Again, as Secretary Rye just said, our hope is we have something that you all can react to by end of August. We'll be providing the commission an update at the August meeting, and then we can spend the fall refining that, and you all can give us feedback. Okay. Final item, Student Success Summit, just making a plug for saving the date, November 14th through 15th at universities at Shady Grove. The Thursday event will be certainly a dinner, but it will be a president and board chair only meeting where we will talk through some strategic planning. We'll have some national organizations to help think through some targeted initiatives. The Friday event will be open to the president and 5 campus leaders, and will be a full day event with panel discussion, again, some more strategic planning. We are intentionally designing this so that presidents and their senior leadership team will be challenging. We're going to be challenging them to evaluate their own strategic planning, their own goals in the context of the larger state Moore-Miller administration, these post-2025 goals, and really planning what we mean by student success with all of these changes forthcoming. So this will not be a sit down and listen. We plan to prepare a specialized packet for each institution for them to look at their metrics, look at their data, and have devoted time to think through, okay, now we have this new information, what are we going to do as a campus to respond to it? In terms of segmental leaders, just in terms of space and kind of managing that, we said 2 representatives for the Thursday president-only meeting, and then up to 5 representatives for the Friday event. Debbie Ng is helping us manage the attendance. If you can please encourage your presidents to prioritize this. This is really going to be one of the few times where we gather specifically presidents to do this strategic planning with Secretary Rye, and like I said, a number of national organizations to give us insider scoop on how other states are doing it. So thinking through that. So please send the message that presidents, board chairs, saving the date, putting this on their calendar, and then certainly for November 15th, a full senior leadership team to attend. Monica.
Yes, thank you, Emily. I just wanted to make you aware that our presidents are really excited about this, of course, but this also corresponds or is occurring at the same time as AACC's fall meeting.
Oh,
okay?
no.
Yeah. Okay. So so that was a concern that the presidents, all of the community college presidents have.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make you aware of that the AACC's fall meeting is from November 12th through the November 15th. Okay. All right.
Would you be able to survey your presidents, particularly your presidents, to see their capacity to join at this point, what they could commit? And we can take this offline, but it would be helpful to know how much they are, how many of the campuses can commit to this.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be great.
I'll speak to you offline about this, but yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for alerting us to that. Matt?
Thanks, Emily. I wasn't going to raise this, but since Monica did, so we actually have our 2-day President's Workshop on the 14th and the 15th. I'm currently in the process of trying to reschedule all of that so that our presidents can make it. But if there are other folks who have issues, or if USM has issues as well, and just please keep us in the loop if you're planning to move the dates on this, because it's just hard to get all these people rallied.
Matt, I can tell you that it will be difficult for us to move the date because we are looking for some participation of certain, external and all that. So it will be nearly impossible. So if you can change your dates, that would be good. Community colleges presidents, the spring AACC meeting is where, a lot of people go. But I don't know how many people are planning to go for fall. But I will appreciate if people look into this. This is an important event for our own state. We are planning, and we are under constraints on what dates we have. So that's all I can say. We have no way of changing this.
Great. Thank you to everyone for prioritizing and advocating. Please feel free to talk with me offline if there are some additional details you all need, or encouragement, or the like. Those are all the updates I have. I am happy to now turn the time over to my colleague, Derek, to provide some additional updates on what's happening with FAFSA outreach. So thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing today? Again, my name is Derek Coley. I serve as the Director for External Relations here at the agency. And we are in a full-fledged push. We're calling it the last mile as it relates to FAFSA outreach. We were awarded, if you all recall from a prior meeting, last meeting, $500,000 grant from the Department of Education to work with community colleges as partners. We have shared a partnership MOU with Prince George's, Warwick, BCCC, as well as Allegheny. And the MOU is currently being reviewed by each institution. For the month of August, we have a communications and outreach plan that we're ready to spring into place once the MOU is signed. I'm hoping it will be returned back here to the agency with no changes or edits this week for the secretary to sign, and then the actual community college presidents And please stay tuned. Our agency as well will be sending out a notice that you all receive shortly, this Friday, in fact, through our Gov delivery system. And the theme of this notice related to FAFSA is do not leave any money on the table. We want to double down on the information with respect to our outreach, that there are a lot of career scholarships and grants that are available here at our agency, but students still must complete the FAFSA. It's not just based on need-based aid. We want to make sure that students understand the importance of the FAFSA as it relates to a lot of the other scholarships and grants that we offer that are separate and distinct from need-based opportunities for post-secondary education and career attainment. I'll stop there. If there are any questions, please, I'll open the floor up. Candace, yes.
I just wanted to say thank you. And we talked about the ECMC grant because there's a little bit of money left.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Allison may want to jump in here, but we applied and we got some money for the system also. So appreciate your counsel there at the end of June, and the turnaround was kind of breakneck speed. So ours grant's much smaller, but same thing, just whatever the institutions need to maybe expand in their current efforts to contact students individually to try to get them to complete their FAFSAs.
And Candace, thank you as well for your insight and input. I heard you loud and clear with respect to some of the regional centers as well. We, in fact, are waiting to finalize and see what the community colleges will do. We may, in fact, put in fifth gear here at the agency as well to look at one of the regional centers and see if we can add a little bit more muscle in mid-August to kind of push this across the finish line. One more point very quickly, Emily, and segment leaders. We are about 4,200 applications down regarding FAFSA completion as of today. So we're close. We can get above that number, most definitely, hopefully between now and August 31st. And so let's keep pushing everything.
Yeah, so I think two things I think we can do focused effort. Look
Yes,
at the school systems where we have the lowest FAFSA completion rate. Focusing on those school system, providing students more support in those targeted support will be helpful. And for all institutions of higher education, students who have applied to our institutions and students who we have accepted for fall, and there are students within those groups who have not completed FAFSA. So if we can help those students, they have already applied, we have already admitted them, so they are, I think, our best group to get the best ROI. I think we need to do that. We are in the middle in the country. We have always been somewhere in the middle, but we are moving up now, and we are almost within 0.5, 0.8 point with our neighboring states. Derek knows that I just want to be just a little bit ahead, not 0.5% below. So, anything you can do to help us, that will be good. And very happy to hear, Candace, that USM has also a similar funding from ECMC. I think that's very, very good. And I want to thank Derek for taking the lead from our side, because that opportunity came when we had so many other things going on. And sometimes you say maybe not this time. Well, this is the time you must do that. The other topic which is not on our agenda is campus safety grants. You know that we had an opportunity to provide campuses some funding to improve the safety on their campuses, provide better learning environment. Originally, it was $25 million, but because of the budget challenges, which it went down a little bit. So I'm going to ask Mr. Newman to give us an update, what happened, where we are.
Good afternoon. So last week, after the Board of Public Works reduction was made, we notified campuses of the awards of the campus safety grant. There were 14 public four-year institutions, 11 community colleges, and 12 independent institutions, which are receiving awards. And we awarded a total of $18.75 million, which is what we had available for the grant awards to these institutions. They've all been notified last week, and we're getting response back from them to sign the grant award application packets, and then we'll start providing funding quarterly throughout the year as we receive their reports that they need to submit to show how they're using this funding. Now, this funding is an enhancement to current campus security initiatives that they're already doing, and their annual budget that they already commit to campus safety. So this is to try to enhance what they're doing on their campuses with respect to campus safety.
I want to add that we were very happy to see the proposals. It shows that campuses are taking safety very seriously. Wonderful ideas. And for $18.7 million, I believe we received proposals for almost $55 million. So if every proposal was not funded 100%, please know that we are very impressed with your efforts. It's just that we didn't have resources to give you 100% funding. But in spite of the budget challenges and all, we are very thankful to Governor Westmore for providing this important support for our institutions. Thank you again for participating in this effort. Member updates. Member updates. Who wants to start? Matt, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. And I'll just build on that and say we heard from a number of our campuses. So kudos to Jeff and his team for getting the dollars out the door in a quick and expeditious manner. Greatly appreciated. And kudos to you, Mrs. Secretary, for following up with the Campus Safety Summit with actual funding to help with security. I think it was very well received by all of our campuses. So thank you. And then my update is more of a question. We do have a number of campuses are very pleased with all the GA money that is going out. And I think we've had conversations, I think a lot of people on this call worked on House Bill 923 2 years ago. And at the time, we all had some concerns and raised them with members of the General Assembly about what that bill would do to the EA program. And I think we all anticipated it would do exactly what it's done, which is basically the GA is dominating all the funding for the EA. And I've just had some inquiries as to whether or not MHEC anticipates legislation, departmental legislation, or legislation from the administration that might sort of clarify the future of EA in a way that would be helpful for obviously campuses and more importantly for students.
So we are not in a position to say anything because we are still receiving ICER data from federal government. We have promised every student who has applied by May 15th that we will award them a GA scholarship. I don't have the data in front of me, but we have awarded almost 3,700 GA initials, and don't take that literally, somewhere close. And students have 6 weeks to accept. So that's where some uncertainties are there. And I'm glad you brought this out because I want to make a request. I'm going to send a letters to all institutions as well. We have a lot of renewals, EA and GA. And for those renewals, we are keeping millions of dollars right now. And we are waiting for information from institutions of higher education on whether students have completed their spring semesters, are they coming back in fall semesters or not. So we had sent some reminders, but if you can expedite that information, then we will know how much money we need to keep for renewals for EA and renewals for GA. Then we will know the arithmetic better where to go with this. So anything you can do, you can ask your campuses to send us the information as soon as possible. We'll really appreciate that. Dr. Rin, you are next, and then Monica.
Thank you. Just briefly, I want to share with you, for those who are not aware, Nancy Shapiro retired, our longtime Associate Vice Chancellor for Education, and we have hired Dr. Jennifer Lynch as in this role. Jennifer comes to us from the county exec's office in Baltimore County, but she also has a background in education. She has her PhD in higher education. She was a principal. She's also a member of the AIB. So we're very excited about her. She's hit the ground running as soon as she joined the team starting in early July. So Jennifer will be, I've already emailed her about your conversation about MHEC and the blueprint and saying, I need help. So you'll be hearing from Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you. Monica.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to give you an update on our Cybersecurity Accelerator project, which just started this month. We hit the ground running. As you know, we were able to secure $2 million in federal funding and an additional $1 million from the Department of Commerce. And our goal is to have established all 16 community colleges having regional cybersecurity accelerator centers. We have an ambitious goal of being able to start providing cybersecurity training and education programs by late spring of 2025. So that is well underway, and something we're really excited about. And you're going to hear a lot more about this as well.
Monica, can you talk about any connection with Baltimore range of these regional centers?
Yeah, so we are in partnership with BCR Cyber. Okay, they are our partners. They are our implementation partners. So that's the connection there. And of course, as you know, we used a lot of information that we gathered from BCR Cyber and the work that they did at Montgomery College through EARN, as well as through EARN. So that was kind of like, a precursor to what we're doing and what we plan to do with the state. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So Montgomery College had a TACT grant 10 years ago, $16 million that created cybersecurity labs and programs all over the state. And this is kind of the extension. I'm very happy to see the collaboration with Baltimore Range, because that is the state-of-art training. Yeah. All institutions, any institution that has cybersecurity program should look into how you can collaborate with Baltimore Range. That's an asset that we have in the state, very unique in the country. So that is a wonderful opportunity, and thank you. And please tell your president that I'm very, very pleased with that effort.
Okay, thank you so much.
Dr. Keys, Morgan State University.
Well, I'll just say that we had our extended cabinet meeting yesterday with the president there, speaking in our new and giving a tour of our new Thurgood Marshall Legacy dorm that's coming online. But another building that has come online already is our new Health and Human Services building on the corner of Argonne and Hillen Road. So if you haven't driven by that and seen what's happening on the campus, it's like a totally new place over there. And I can say that I was challenged with trying to squeeze 200 sections of courses where they didn't have houses before. They didn't have their own home before. So, they might all want to have their class on Tuesday and Thursday from 10 to 12, but that's not going to happen in the future. But anyway, squeezing all those classes in for the fall, and we're looking forward to the opening, when students come back and see where they're going to be having classes. It's a wonderful building.
Great news. Congratulations. And tell Dr. Wilson that we don't want to just drive by.
No, we want you to come. We have a large community engagement room. There's two rooms, 2 spaces, but they're very large, where we hope that everyone will come by and help us with our community initiatives.
Yeah. And we often look for free space too, so keep in mind.
You have to fight with the deans on that. Okay.
So St. Mary's, Dr. Arnett.
Yes, thank you. Echoing earlier thanks and appreciation for the campus security grant. that came to our attention late in the process, and we were delighted to have the opportunity to apply, and we're thrilled with the funding that the campus has received in a very timely way to advance some key initiatives that we are using to further enhance our security operations. And then speaking now as the co-chair of our middle state self-review, we are in our draft stage. Our self-study visit is this coming spring, and I was delighted to get more of the information about where we are in our mission statement review process, because we have a section about we're supposed to hear from MHEC about where we are with the process for the mission statement review. So delighted to be able to add those details now into my draft. So thank you.
Thank you. And, on campus safety grant, we'll be sending a press release and thanking Governor for these resources. If you want your codes to be added, make sure you send it to Derek Coley, and we'll try to accommodate as much as we can. Thank you. Enjoy rest of the day and at least another month of the summer. Thank you very much for all your time today. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.